So before we begin talking about the golden era of hip hop culture, I think it'd be fitting to kind of give a definition of what it is we're really talking about. So I found this really good definition. I want to read it. It says the golden era is a period considered the peak in the history of a country or people, a time period when the greatest achievements were made. I believe it begins around 81 to around 86, but we can even go, farther back from that, because in the beginnings you really had the first hip hop DJ, which is Mr. Magic on WHBI, and I believe that begins around 1979. So that's even earlier than 81. But when we talk about the golden era of hip hop culture, we're talking about a plethora of things that shaped the culture, and you really don't see the shaping of the culture until the 80s. That's when you really see the shaping of the culture. Okay, so when we're talking about the shaping of the culture, so we got Mr. Magic of WHBI, then we have the radio stations, right? So we have WBLS 107.5 is the radio station that was known. And that with that, you have Mr. Magic and Marley Marl, right? And so they're in a battle with another competing radio station at that time, 98.7 Kiss FM. And there's this battle between, Red Alert and Chuck Chillout, along with Mr. Magic and Marley Marl. Now, again, this is happening within that time frame, between 81 and 86, right? So and then you have the Zulu Beats with Africa Islam, WHBI as well. It wasn't a major radio station, but it was a station that, had a lot of hip hop personalities, beginning with Mr. Magic, beginning with, people like the Awesome Two, the Supreme Team. And then you have, then you start to have the clubs, right? And the clubs are really the spots that all the ghetto celebrities were going to. So you start off, at Negril, 1981, right? So this is like where all the elements are brought together. Under Bambaataa, under, Michael Holman, under, Henry Shaflan, under, Fab Five Freddy. Then you had the Roxy, which would become the home for Zulu, right? So you got Grand Mixer DXT, you got, Jazzy J, Africa Bambaataa playing at the Roxy, which was a roller skating rink. Then you have the Fun House. Again, this is the 80s, right? Then you have the Fun House. But then you had also other spots, the Disco Fever, and then, you had the Skate Key, all these places, and then you had the street jams. Now let's keep in mind, there were street jams in the 70s, but it's really the 80s that the golden era of hip hop culture is shaped. And the street jams are shaped really in the 80s, right? And so you had some famous parks that, were known for the street jams, Poe Park, you had Echo Park, you had 63 Park, you had 23 Park, you had Crotona Park, and there's so many other spots that were places where hip hop in the 80s would really become those places where jams took place. And then you just had the block parties where DJs were bringing out their sets on the blocks. Then you had the battles between and we're talking about the golden era, between the MC crews. So you had the battle between, the Cold Crush and the Fantastic. You had just non-celebrity MC crews that were just regular MC crews battling each other at local schoolyards and places like Walton High School and all kinds of places that were happening, 118, 123, There were these jams that were happening with these battles. Then you had the graffiti movement that was huge during the golden era. This is where we have those early years of bombing trains and hitting the layups and hitting the yards, and really graffiti crews battling each other, and I'm not glorifying this, but sticking each other up for their paint, and all this stuff was happening during the golden era. And then you had those places that you would go for your fashion, where you would go shopping. Fordham Road in the Bronx, Third Avenue, Orchard Street in Manhattan, Canal Street. So it's all a part, the elements of hip hop culture, right? From the graffiti crews in the 80s to the DJs, to the MCs, or to the B-boys, the B-boy crews, the B-boy battles really take shape in the 80s. And so we're going to end this off by listening to Popmaster Fable and Ken Swift talk about early hip-hop fashion. And so I hope you enjoyed this little short episode about the golden era of hip-hop culture between 81 and 1986.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? What's going on? It's Ken Swift over here chilling with Popmaster Fable. What you just saw was a little blast from the past, you know what I'm saying, from old stuff I did from the early 80s. Kind of wish I had stuff that went a little bit back, but I hope y'all enjoyed that. Of course, this is volume 2, and I thought it would be fitting to talk about fashion coming off that old footage, original hip-hop fashion, but original ways that people used to dress back in the days. Me and Fable were part of the group of people that learned from some of our elders and watched what we saw on the street and in some of the parks and jams, and absorb the style, absorb the flavor of dressing, and in that same instant try to put our own flavor and character into what we wore. Right now we chilling out wearing some old school original Lee suits, with the Hot Parker sweater, British Walkers, the Kangos, the British double strap, Velcro. I got the green suede joints with the tie-ups, with the tassels, so just doing a little something like back in the days, how we used to put it all together. I got the green suede British Walkers, with the tie-ups and the tassels, got the Lee suit on, got the mock neck, dark green mock neck, the Hot Parker over it, the Lee jacket, original style.
I'm rocking very similar, alpaca. These were very famous back in the days. A lot of brothers wore them, but the whole point was, what were you gonna rock with it? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that everyone dressed absolutely unique and no one looked like someone else. Of course, there was a certain fashion that everyone liked, but it was all in how you rocked it. I'm wearing the two-tone British. There's certain times where you would buy, let's say, black with gray, and since the gray was a lighter color, you could take spray dye and dye the suede a different color, so it'll be absolutely unique. These I bought them already like this, light sky blue and dark blue. So like you hear on the Cuban Links album, Wu-Tang, on one of those tracks you hear them talking about the Wallabies and how they dye just a certain part. It was very similar with the British Walkers. As a matter of fact, they're kind of from the same era, if not British and Playboys are even older. The Playboys were the shoes with the fat rubber. Getting into the real science of how we used to dress, basically the same ingredients that it took to be a dope B-boy, be a dope MC, be a dope graph writer. It took the very same ingredients to look fly, It took originality, finesse, just rocking your styles really uniquely. Even though, like I said, a lot of people wore Lee suits back in the days, a lot of people wore British, a lot of people wore, 69ers or what have you. It was all in how you wore it and how you altered it, which brings graffiti into the picture. The real true hip-hop fashions, to my personal opinion, was when we added our own element to it, like graph. Lee jackets always had graph on the back. A lot of the styles, like for instance, doing graph on the back of the Lee jackets actually came from the outlaw gangs that were out around that time. The Black Spades, the Savage Nomads. Over here on the west side, you have La Familia, La West Side Familia. You know, you had the Chingalings, you had just a whole bunch of different outlaws that used to rock stuff like that. So I think we kind of got it from them and it was passed on. That was a fashion like from the 60s, the mid 60s and late 60s.
Time and what we did, we used to iron our laces. We used to put the massive crease on the lees. You know, we used to put the perm crease in the lees. You know, we used to stick a little pearl in the Kango. You know what I'm saying? Fill it up with the plastic real tight. You know what I'm saying? So where you couldn't see no wrinkles in the Kango.